Hey everyone, welcome to the Get Your Life Together Girl podcast, the ultimate blueprint to self-love and inner peace. I'm your host, Danielle Van. As a cognitive behavioral therapist, a life coach to women, meditation teacher, and author, I've spent my life studying and learning from the stories that make us human. It's my passion and goal to help you shift your mindset and create a lifelong revolution to help you reach your greatest potential. Have you ever questioned why healing hurts so bad? If you have, you are not alone. Healing from anything is a process, and life dramatically transforms when we allow ourselves to feel, accept, and grow through the things that happen to and through us. However, most people get stuck in their healing process because it can often hurt worse than the actual event. It's very common, and we hold ourselves in a place that is not healthy and keeps us from fully thriving. That's why you and I are taking a one-on-one deep dive into why healing hurts and the steps of healing and how it produces that pain. It's a different conversation, but one that is definitely needed. So let's dive right in. The Get Your Life Together Girl podcast starts right now. Healing is such a deeply personal conversation. It's one that, you can't rush, you can't fake, you can't hide behind, and you can't lie about. Because of that, I thought we would have a conversation about why healing hurts. It's such a necessary conversation. It's one we don't talk about really openly, but it is something that I hope will change your perspective on healing, and it'll allow you to move yourself forward. And in order to really get to a place where we both understand each other, I thought I would share my healing story, at least what brought me into healing to begin with. So 8 years ago, I found myself in a hospital bed listening to the constant rhythm of my heart fill the room. The mechanical noise of life-saving tools was literally getting on my nerves. I can still hear it. I can picture it. I have it locked in my brain. Truthfully, I was somewhere between royally pissed off, writhing in pain from a migraine that was so intense that everything in the room had a ghostly shadow to it, and trying to figure out whether or not I had the will to continue to live. That sounds extremely dramatic, but that's exactly where I was. And I was being asked to surrender to the moment, to my experiences. And truthfully, despite all of the work I've done both on myself and helping others through their own healing process, that is still something to this day that I am not very good at, the surrendering part. I'm great at being mindful. I'm great at really holding space for myself, but the surrendering and letting go of control, not so much, right? And that's a huge part of healing. Life had thrown me into what many call the dark night of the soul. Those moments that compile and make everything feel as if it's crashing down on you. We've all had those moments. Or, if you're somebody who listens and leans into superstition, you may say that there were 3 big events that have to happen because bad luck comes in threes. I know now that what I experienced was not the dark night of the soul, but instead the extreme break that I needed to find the light. If you're new here and haven't listened to or read any of my previous work, you may be saying, okay, great, but what happened? Why all the dramatics? And I'll be happy to give you a little small taste of what I went through. My father-in-law passed away, and he was an iconic man in my eyes. 7 days later, the woman who raised me, my stepmom of over 30 years, passed away. And 45 days later, I was driving 100 miles an hour down a freeway at the beginning of rush hour with our middle daughter in the back seat in grave condition. As I pulled into the hospital, I nearly hit a valet and have this distinct memory of running in with her lying in my arms, screaming for help. I was in a bad place. We spent weeks in the hospital after we found out that she was in kidney failure. The day before I found myself in that hospital bed, the one that I owned for myself, she had gone through a lengthy surgery to remove that kidney that was near rupture. 3 big events, and then there I was sick too. I was angry. Why did all of these things happen? When did we get a break? How could I be in a hospital bed and not taking care of my child or the other 2 children that I had for that matter? And why was I in so much pain? I was in a space where I was near a break. A nurse came in and she took my blood pressure, and truthfully, I can't tell you her name or what she looked like, but I can tell you that she saved me that day. Not necessarily in a medical way, but in a way that took me from an emotional and mental state and opened my eyes. She asked me what was going on and why I was there for this massive headache where I couldn't even open my eyes. And when I went through the events of the last 45 days, she dropped something on the tray close to me and said, "That's emotional pain, and it will kill you." I was angry. She was right, but I was angry. And those words, "that is emotional pain and it will kill you," would soon become the driver of why I am with you today, why I do the work that I do today, why I sit in session after session for hours, 5 days a week, and hold the hands of women and couples who are in the same space or worse than I was that day. The truth is, life tests each of us. But the question is, what will you do about it? Do you have the strength to move through your experiences and heal? And if so, can you sustain yourself when healing hurts the most? More so, why does healing even hurt to begin with? Last week, I asked the beautiful Get Your Life Together Girl Instagram community what they wanted to chat about on this week's episode, and why healing hurts won by like 75% of the vote. It was incredible. Now, I do want to say, this isn't so much a conversation about how to heal necessarily. Of course, there will be elements of some of that, but instead, this is really a conversation of the why. Why does it hurt when we move into healing? That is something we don't talk about. Like I said, it is so necessary to address because it is the stop point for a lot of people. And as the community voted on this topic, I have to tell you, it did not surprise me, because it is a question. If, you're sitting in front of me and you say, "Why does this hurt so bad?" I have an answer. So I want to break it down. And the first place that we have to start is to understand what hurt means. Listen, each of us connect differently to our emotions, to trauma, to pain. It comes on a scale of intensity from what feels like a very minor, but say noticeable loss, to a life-altering experience that is persistent and heavy in our emotions, like finding yourself in the hospital with a migraine, or walking through a death, or the car accident, or the loss of a child, the loss of a pregnancy, right? What's also very important to point out is that each of us connects with our healing and our hurting in a very unique way. So one person may hurt and really show up in a very pissed off, angry, ready to shut down way, where another person can feel despair, anguish, emptiness, or even hopelessness. Painful emotions make it more challenging to complete tasks, right? And so that's one thing that somebody may show up as, is they can't really fulfill their job, or they can't do simple things. One person may not be able to connect with joy. Another person may deal with impaired basic functions like not being able to sleep. Whatever it is for you, that's your reaction to pain. It's your reaction to healing. It's your reaction to trauma. All of that is to say that no matter how it shows up, emotional pain is real. What you feel is valid. It doesn't matter how it got there. It doesn't matter what happened. It really matters when we're talking about healing and hurting. All that really matters is how you connect to it and how you're processing your experience. What's even greater than that to understand is that emotional pain is activated in the same region of the brain that's associated to physical pain. I want you to hear me when I say that. It is so necessary. This is generally why people stop. They will say, I feel pain, because they literally do. The experience of emotionally hurting isn't too far off from the discomfort of an injury. You roll your ankle, you feel pain. You have a big shock in your life, you feel pain. You may not feel it in your ankle, but you feel it in your body. This feeling leads us to understand and to know that we experience emotional pain the same way that we experience physical pain. And if you have a low threshold for pain or a low window of tolerance, right? We can't tolerate anymore because the nervous system is so activated. You will do anything to push against it, right? I want you to let that sink in. Emotional pain and physical pain are in the same region in the brain, and we feel them very similarly. Your brain doesn't also know the difference between a physical wound and an emotional wound. It just knows that it hurts. The same flooding of the neurotransmitters and pain relievers occur for both wounds. When I say that healing hurts, it's because it does. When we hurt, we hurt. When there's an ache, there's an ache. Many of us do everything we can, both consciously and subconsciously, to resist and avoid any kind of pain. We don't like pain. It makes us feel unsafe. We do everything possible to move out of situations that could make us feel like there is a problem or that we are not safe in our entirety. But the thing is, once pain is present, the more we resist it, the greater it becomes. I love giving this example when women are sitting in front of me because it's such a visualization that really can help you when you're in the process of trying to heal and you want to either suppress the healing or hurry through it or just stop doing it, period. And it is to think about swimming upstream. Think of the pain as the rapids that you're swimming up against. And when you resist the current or the rapids and you try to move in the opposite direction of the way the water is flowing, what happens? The journey is far more difficult, right? And that's what happens when we hurt. We're like, oh, nope, not swimming into that. Thank you so very much. And yet we wear ourselves out trying to not get into the healing. And we wear ourselves out when we move in the opposite direction of the current. Yet when you move with the current, when you swim downstream anytime, right, you get to your destination in a much more rational, logical, and timely manner. We can even take this an even greater step further when we talk about what's happening in the body, because emotional pain causes the dorsal vagal to shut down. And you've heard me talk about fight, flight, or freeze, right? In order to sustain life, the body has two complementary nervous systems, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. So sympathetic is the arousing system, and the parasympathetic is the calming system. We need both of them to have psychological balance, but also for our, basic survival. It's a gentle collaboration between the two. But when we hurt or when our stress becomes too great, the sympathetic system automatically goes into fight or flight. This is a built-in response, a natural response. And it is a major part of why healing hurts. When we're in fight or flight or freeze, guess what? We are actually activating those systems in our body that tells us pain is present. If you've listened to me in this podcast, you know that our brain's number one job is to keep us safe. And when we are activated in fight, flight, or freeze, we are not in a place where our brain says we are safe. All of that to say is this is a natural need of survival, and it's also a natural way for us to deal with our emotional hurt. With hurt comes the need to heal. So let's talk a little bit more now that we know that this is a physical reaction, and that's generally why we hurt so bad when we have gone through something, is because that's literally how we are wired. It's what our brain recognizes. It's how our body responds. It is built in survival, and we can't brain hack that. We can't biohack that. That's just the way it is. But let's talk about why it hurts so bad to heal when pain is already present. That is something that a lot of people get very confused by. Like, I already hurt. Why do I need to hurt more? Right? And the hardest part for most people to understand about that is that the pain actually comes from acceptance. Emotional wounds trigger shame, fear, and blame within us, the nastiest of our negative emotions. These emotions cause pain in and of themselves. Accepting that hard things happen sucks, right? It is not fun. And when we lean in, we open our wounds. We reconnect to them. We reopen the physical pain time and time again. It's why you could be experiencing something, really having a hard time. You lie down, you go to sleep, you turn everything off, and you get up in the morning and you feel physically drained. It's because you're reopening that space. You're triggering that within yourself and you're having a physical response. That is why most people stop the healing process. This is why it hurts. We don't want to continue. Again, like I said, we do everything to reject it. Yet, if you learn nothing else today, let it be this. The only way through anything is through it. When something happens, we have to acknowledge it. We have to acknowledge how we felt. We have to acknowledge the behavior that came from the experience. So important. One of the biggest things that I hear and believe that it is a mistake is that a lot of times when we get into a place of acceptance and we are ready to heal, we don't actually understand what we need. And if the wound is so big that we have to seek help, we actually don't take time to break down what kind of help we are seeking. And if you are one that leans into traditional talk therapy, which is totally fine, you have to understand that you're reopening that wound time and time again. How can you accept anything if you continually recircle around the same issues? You need tools. You need steps, right? That's why I do what I do. But the first thing that we have to look at is the why, the how it's made us feel, and then the acceptance part. And that comes with a willingness to say the event happened. Sometimes people try to stay in denial when they face tough situations. However, the longer you try to avoid the problem, the longer it takes to address it. And it creates more pain. Acknowledging that the situation exists, regardless how you feel about it, begins to allow you to heal in a different way. It teaches us that we don't have to be in the pain cycle, but instead in the release cycle. We have to be prepared to face the situation head on so we can get through it. And even if you can't change the situation, acknowledging allows you to get into release. There's this mentality that happens so often where people will just say, suck it up or get over it. And they say it to other people in their lives, or they even say it to themselves. But I want you to know that that actually causes more pain, and it is something that actually makes the ache so much deeper. Emotional wounds will linger and grow deeper when they are left untreated or they are rejected. It's so easy to ignore our emotional pain and bury it. However, the longer it stays, the more damage it does. So if you're somebody who doesn't acknowledge, know that you're causing your own pain, and that's why healing hurts. The next reason why healing hurts so much is that we have to be able to move through the process of healing itself. And that by nature means that a vast number of emotions are going to come to the surface, and not all of them feel good, right? So let's talk about the stages of healing so that we know why we are experiencing hurt to begin with. The first stage of healing is grief and denial. Grief is an intense emotional suffering caused by a loss. And you can experience grief for any reason. It does not have to be a death. That's something that is such a misconception, at least in the United States. You don't have to have a permanent departure in order to know and to meet grief. It doesn't have to be a death. It can be rejection, expectations, denial. Grief's get-off point isn't death, right? When we feel that we've lost something important to us, when this is our reality, grief finds its way inside our hearts and our minds. It tells us these dirty lies and it creates pain, right? So by nature, healing is going to create pain. And yet in order to heal, we have to look at the loss. We have to lean into acceptance. We have to be willing to grow out of the moment. Stage 2 of healing for many people is anger. Anger usually follows the grief stage because we ask ourselves that question, the same one I asked myself in the hospital bed, why me? Why do these things happen to me? I remember thinking when the nurse left, I literally hate where I am right now. I hate being separated from my child who needed me. I hated the pain I was in. I hated all of the grief and heaviness that I was feeling. I hated the loss. I continued to use the word hate. We often do. I hate feeling this way. But what is hate? It's anger. We all experience it, but with hate and anger, what happens? Hard feelings arise, and we have to move through them. When we recognize that we're angry, we can move to the next stage, which is bargaining. Now, when we're talking about a death, a lot of times we'll talk about the emotional pain of bargaining. I'll do anything to bring that person back. Or divorce. I'll do anything to change the situation. But bargaining comes across all different types of experiences. It's here that we try to trick ourselves into suppressing our emotions, right? We begin to say, I will or I won't do X, Y, and Z if I could just change this. We try our best to force our way out of the hurt. And isn't that upstream swimming though, right? It's here that we are constantly leaning into the hard in hopes of feeling better. And that drives up our pain factor. It never works. And our healing phase is really drowned in hard emotions. For some, bargaining moves them into stage 4, which is depression. And I really want you to hear what I'm about to say about depression, because we're not talking about it in the way that you see on commercials for different pharmaceuticals. I'm not talking about lying in bed all day. I'm not talking about being unwilling to take a shower. I'm talking about depression in a way that is unexpressed anger that's turned inward on the self. That kind of depression. And I want you to hear me. Not everyone goes from bargaining to depression, okay? But a lot of times when we are healing, we do get into a place where we turn that anger inward on ourselves. When we do not clean out our emotions, when healing is not within our reach, we lean into those experiences. We're mad, we're pissed off, we're angry with ourselves, we're angry with life, we're angry. And that turns inward. It's here that a lot of women will say to me, I have no self-worth, I have no confidence, I cannot face myself. And it's because this is the place that they left themselves off, right? Maybe they've done a little bit of work, they've felt the pain, they're trying to move through it, but they hold themselves right here in this stage. And it's exhausting. It makes you withdraw from your life and your emotional experiences. It is the essence of pain, right? Depression doesn't have to be all of those things. It can be this, where we turn inward and we kill the light that is us, because it's easier than dealing with this nasty pain. But once we get through all of that, we lead ourselves right back to acceptance. Acceptance does not, and generally is not, a happy stage. I want to make that very clear. A lot of people will say, okay, I accept that this happened to me, but I don't feel any better. And you're not supposed to, right? A lot of times it's the exact opposite. You feel worse because you've gone through something really hard. Or there's another factor where this stage makes you feel really empty, as if the pain is gone and the struggle is over, but there's yet still so much to do, right? You must allow time to bring true healing in. You have to be willing to be a healed person. Healing is a lifelong effort. It takes baby steps for us to do what we need to do and not to try to rush. Because when we rush through pain, we become overwhelmed. We use the word stuck, or we say that we failed. We have to make micro changes so that we can move through anything and find success. When we trick ourselves into believing that we cannot improve our lives until we fully heal, we really continue the pain cycle. It's not accurate. Any modest amount of healing will improve the quality of your life, right? If you take one step toward making a small improvement in your mood, your ability to cope with a trigger, your relationships, your self-esteem, your daily activities in a positive way, you're reducing the pain cycle. It's so important. I said I would give you some kind of key factors in the healing process, and these are tools in a way because they're applications in our lives. So when we start leaning into healing, we have to be patient and we have to be persistent. Healing is a lot of work. You need to be patient. You have to allow time to gain new insights and skills. And you have to be willing to not force your way. A lot of people don't have patience. It's not their forte. I get it. However, if you don't have patience with yourself, with the events, with your feelings, you increase your pain. And that, of course, makes healing more painful. Okay? You have to be willing to process your feelings about the moment in order to open the door to change. With a baseline understanding of why healing is so hard and why it's painful, you have to realize that it takes effort, acceptance, leaning in, understanding, and the next question should always be, what do I want to come next? What do I want? Does your healing stop because you've cleaned up a little bit of stuff? No, not necessarily. The other question I get so often is, can I go backwards in my healing? And it's a tricky question for me because I often believe when we stop, we actually just put a pin in the situation, in the process, in the healing. It's not like we have to start all the way over from the beginning because anytime we process anything, we gain insight. But can you revert? Sure, we can revert in everything that we do. But when we are stopping and when we are in control of how we feel, we are creating new patterns and behaviors and willingness to have new understanding is what helps us level up our lives. Pain is always going to be present when pain was a part of the situation. Will pain always be present when we have a space that things are not easy? Sure, it's absolutely possible. However, healing can be something different. As I said in the beginning, it's all about the self-connection. We can really begin this process by asking ourselves, what do I want? What do I need? How do I want to feel? And how will I get there? Those are the 4 fundamental questions that I always ask. They are fundamental in everything that we do. You see, healing is always going to be a process of leveling up. And leveling up means we have to let go. And when we let go, that means something comes to an end. And a lot of times that means sadness. A lot of times that means leaning into our lower emotions. A lot of times it means that we are really putting ourselves in a space that we're not comfortable, and that can cause pain. Healing by nature is about experience. But on the other side of this healing, of this experience, is a new path. And it's an opportunity to lean into something and create what you wish. Now, I want to say this because it's so important. Healing is something that can not always be done on its own. Can some people do it? Yes. Does it take work? Absolutely. Does it take a fierceness not to stop? 100%. It's just not easy, but it can be done. Is healing and dealing with pain easier with someone who's qualified to help you through it? Yes, it just is. Is it worthy of an investment? Yes, you are worthy of investing into. Again, healing's not easy, but it is possible. And when you're ready to release the hurt and lead into the good, you'll find so much more for yourself. You'll realize that things hurt because things hurt. And the only way through it is through it. And in order to make change happen in your life, you have to make change happen in your life. So, is there a magic reason why it hurts to heal? Yeah, you're wired that way. Is there a way to get out? Always. You have to allow yourself to. And when you do, you realize that it is an essential step into getting your life together, girl. Thank you so much for listening to the Get Your Life Together Girl podcast. If you've enjoyed these tips for bettering your life and are seeking daily inspiration and additional tools and tips, you can follow me on social media at Get Your Life Together Girl on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and Clapper. You can also visit our show notes, blog, and my website at getyourlifetogethergirl.com. While you're there, I invite you to check out the Get Your Life Together Girl Women's Circle. We meet once a month, and there's already downloadable tools for you to use in your healing practice right now, and it's only $9 a month. Until next time, be kind to yourself and others.